Welcome to The Explainer. Look, I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at something genuinely fascinating. We've all seen the massive, sweeping predictions about AI, right? The sci-fi utopias, the doomsday scenarios, the whole shebang. But today, we're moving past all that wild hype. Instead, we're going to take a grounded, hyper-realistic look at the next 5 years in AI. We're drawing directly from Chapter 19 of a massive analysis on this very subject. Because frankly, we're at the end of the beginning of the AI revolution, and it's time to map the actual terrain ahead. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look beyond the AI hype. Then, emerging technologies to watch. Third, 3 visions of the future. Fourth, a personal AI protocol. And finally, what remains for humans? Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Beyond the AI Hype, From Evangelism to Evaluation. We're kicking things off with a massive cultural shift that's fundamentally changing the enterprise AI space right this very second. According to a forecast by Stanford's Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Institute, the absolute biggest shift in AI isn't going to be technological at all. It's cultural. We are officially exiting the era of AI evangelism, that wild period of rapid expansion and billion-dollar bets, where everyone was simply asking, wait, can AI actually do this? Now, though, we're entering the era of evaluation. Organizations are sobering up. Now they're asking, okay, how well does it do this, at what cost, and for whom? The companies that treated AI like some sort of magic wand are quickly realizing it's really just a tool. And like any tool, it requires actual skill, maintenance, and crucially, realistic expectations. A perfect example of this massive reality check is what we call agentic AI. These are systems designed to not just chat with you, but to actually go out and autonomously execute tasks across multiple apps. And man, there is so much hype around this. But check out this data from Deloitte's Tech Trends report. While plenty of companies are piloting these systems, a mere 11% of organizations are actually using agentic AI in production. A whopping 89% are not. So that deployment gap between the marketing hype and the ground reality, it is absolutely enormous. And honestly, it gets even more challenging. Gartner predicts that by 2027, over 40% of agentic AI projects will just outright fail. And you might be wondering, why? Well, it's not actually because the AI itself is bad. It's because legacy IT systems simply cannot handle modern AI execution demands. You've got organizations trying to use plug-and-play AI without fixing their underlying messy data architecture first. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the highly descriptive, honestly kind of visceral term Deloitte uses for what happens when you ignore those underlying systems: work slop. I mean, it sounds like a terrible cafeteria meal, right? And for your IT department, it really kind of is. When you layer poorly designed AI agents onto broken, outdated workflows, you don't get magic efficiency. You just get work slop, processes that are literally less efficient than the manual human workflows they just replaced. The AI deployments that actually succeed, like HPE's Operational Performance Agent or Toyota's supply chain tools, they succeed because the entire underlying data architecture was completely ripped up and redesigned to support them. Now, there's another, much quieter, crisis shifting the landscape right now, and that's the impending exhaustion of training data. Researchers are actually warning that the high-quality, human-generated text data used to train these massive models could just run out by 2026. The internet has essentially been fully scraped. So the solution everyone's pushing is synthetic data, basically AI generating text, images, and video to train the next generation of AI. But this creates a huge paradox. While it fills the data gap, it severely risks amplifying errors. You end up with these closed feedback loops where models just train on their own outputs until those outputs become utterly meaningless. It makes what the AI actually knows incredibly opaque. Zooming out to the global stage, another major trend reshaping the next 5 years is AI sovereignty. Nations are becoming increasingly and understandably uncomfortable with their citizens' data just flowing straight into American data centers, or having their political discourse shaped by algorithms designed exclusively in Silicon Valley. So, countries like the UAE, South Korea, China, and the European Union are heavily investing in their own domestic large language models and local computing infrastructure. What this leads to is a fascinating fragmentation of the internet and AI as a whole. The idea of one universal global chatbot is totally fading. Instead, we're going to see this patchwork of regional systems. Chinese models will operate under Chinese values. European models will obviously prioritize their strict privacy and regulatory compliance. And American models will reflect commercial priorities. So that critical question of what AI should want, what we call the alignment problem, is rapidly becoming a massive geopolitical issue, not just a technical one. Moving right along, Section 2, Emerging Technologies to Watch. We're taking a realistic look at robotics, brain-computer interfaces, and quantum. Let's pivot from software and geopolitics for a second to the actual physical and hardware technologies set to shape the next half-decade. We hear a ton of promises, so let's ground them in reality. Here is a realistic timeline for two heavily hyped technologies: brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, and quantum computing. For BCIs, companies like Neuralink and Paradromics are making incredible, genuine progress in clinical trials, actually allowing individuals with severe paralysis to control computers with just their thoughts. It's amazing. But make no mistake, for the next 5 years, this is strictly a medical story, not a consumer transhumanist one where we're all walking around with chips in our heads. As for quantum, IBM predicts a quantum advantage in specific fields like chemistry by 2026 and fault-tolerant computing by 2029. But here's the kicker. Quantum computers excel at things like molecular simulation and cryptography. They do not excel at the pattern recognition needed for AI. So quantum is a massive parallel revolution, but it's not going to accelerate AI training in the near future. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of the robotics revolution. I mean, we've been promised the sci-fi humanoid butler folding our laundry for decades now, right? The reality? Over the next 5 years, robots are finally moving out of the lab and into commercial deployment, but they are heading straight to warehouses and logistics hubs. Companies are deploying fleets of wheeled and bipedal robots for dangerous, highly repetitive work. So the economic impact is going to be heavily concentrated in industrial sectors, for sure not in your living room anytime soon. Okay, Section 3, 3 visions of the future. Exploring utopia, dystopia, and the middle. So with all these software and hardware shifts happening, where is humanity actually heading? Well, the source text outlines 3 distinct ways this macro societal picture could play out. You usually only hear about 2 of these in the daily headlines. First, there's the utopia scenario, which is heavily preferred by Silicon Valley. This is where AI magically solves climate change and completely frees humanity. But, this assumes that technological capability automatically translates into shared equitable social progress, which history tells us is rarely true without some serious, deliberate political effort. Second is the dystopia scenario, where AI enables totalitarian control and mass joblessness. But that assumes societies do absolutely nothing to adapt or regulate, which is unlikely. So the most likely scenario, and the one that gets the least attention, is what the author brilliantly calls the boring middle. It's messy, it's uneven, some industries transform completely, while others resist. Politics muddles through. It's a gradual, relentless change shaped by daily human choices, not just technological determinism. Let's bring it down to the personal level. Section 4, a personal AI protocol. Navigating the boring middle. If we really are heading into this messy, boring middle, how on earth do we navigate it individually? We need to transition from the global macro level down to our own daily choices by establishing a personal AI protocol. The author shares their own highly intentional protocol here, and I want you to notice the really clear boundary lines drawn. AI acts as a fantastic lever for synthesizing research to save time, writing coding boilerplate, translation, and initial data exploration. It's great for that. But crucially, you skip AI for emotional decisions because, well, values are deeply personal, they aren't optimization problems. Absolutely no AI for medical diagnoses or unverified legal advice because the stakes are just way too high. And most importantly, no AI for replacing human judgment. Your personal protocol might look a little different, but the one universal rule is intentionality. You have to actively decide what you outsource to the machine and what you keep for yourself. At the very heart of this personal protocol is something really profound called the blank page rule. It simply states, if you have not struggled with a problem, do not outsource the struggle. Think about it. If you ask an AI to generate an idea before you've even spent a minute thinking about it yourself, you are bypassing the friction required to actually learn. The struggle is exactly where human understanding lives. AI should be a sparring partner to help you refine your own thoughts, not some cognitive prosthetic that just does the thinking for you. This brings us to Section 5, What Remains for Humans? Defining Human Purpose. This section dives into a truly profound, almost existential question posed by philosopher Daniel Susskind. In an age of growing machine superiority, what will actually remain for people to do? Let's move to this next slide and see how this builds a framework for human usefulness. Susskind argues that 3 distinct limits will protect human work, even if AI becomes objectively better at a given task. First, comparative advantage, which is all about economic efficiency and relative cost. Second, preference limits, meaning we simply value the fact that a human did it, kind of like preferring human-made art or human nurses because we share that same mortality. And third, moral limits. We inherently require a human in the loop for heavy things like the justice system or military targeting because we absolutely need a moral agent who can actually be held accountable. A machine simply cannot stand trial or feel remorse. To quickly understand that first limit, comparative advantage, Susskind uses the Lionel Messi analogy, and it's brilliant. Imagine Lionel Messi is not only the world's best footballer, but also, somehow, the world's fastest knitter. Even if he knits a truly phenomenal scarf, should he sit at home and knit his own sweaters? No, of course not. He should play football while others knit, because his opportunity cost for not playing football is just way too high. Similarly, even if machines eventually become better than humans at literally everything, it will be too expensive or inefficient to deploy them for every single task. We will retain jobs simply because humans will be the cheaper, more efficient option for tasks that just don't justify firing up a massive, power-hungry machine. But beyond the pure economics, there's the deeper philosophical question of human purpose. The author makes an incredibly powerful observation here. Struggle is not a bug in the human experience. It is the feature from which meaning emerges. Think about when a parent comforts a child at 3 a.m. The value there isn't in how efficiently the comfort was delivered. The value is entirely in the shared vulnerability. When you wrestle with a difficult concept and finally, suddenly understand it, you are transformed by that process. These aren't just mere tasks to be outsourced to an algorithm. They're transformations, and you simply cannot outsource a personal transformation. So the crucial point is this: AI is just a tool. A hammer can build a house, or it can break a window. AI can drastically accelerate scientific discovery, or it can accelerate the total collapse of a shared reality. The technology itself literally does not care which outcome happens. The caring, the human judgment, the values, the decision of what is actually worth protecting and when to say no to efficiency just to preserve human dignity, that belongs entirely to us. The future isn't predetermined by a handful of engineers in Silicon Valley. It is determined by the rest of us, the users, the citizens, the voters, which leaves us with the absolute most important question you can ask yourself as we navigate these next 5 years. What kind of world do you want to live in? Because ultimately that world will be built on our daily human choices. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this gives you a powerful new framework for looking at the years ahead.